right, 25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Beautiful Wednesday. Hope you're doing okay. Hey, we are done with 2 months. 2 months of 2018 are now history. Right? Just a few more hours. It'll be the beginning of the third month.
Exactly.
Did you make any New Year's resolutions that had to do with that had to do with starting a business of your own? I know some of you have. I've heard it from you. And some of you said, you know what, I'm going to start my own at-home business. And so the world has changed greatly. You can do a lot. I have a niece who is a teacher at home. She teaches on a computer, which, of course, she's got some young children, so it would make only sense that she has that opportunity. Colleen DeBaise, I hope I'm saying her name right, she's got a book called Start a Successful Business, Expert Advice to Take Your Startup from Idea to Empire. She has an amazing set of credentials, including she's the host of a podcast at the Story Exchange. She's the founder of something called the Hampton Bee. She's a contributing editor at Inc., There's a good one right there. She's a small business editor at the Wall Street Journal, another good one. And it goes on and on and on from there. New York Times, Entrepreneur, Business Week. Colleen DeBaise, we're all ears. Good morning. How are you?
Hey. Oh, it's so nice to be on your show.
Oh, it's an honor to have you. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the east end of Long Island. I live in the Hamptons, which is a beach community.
I grew up on Long Island, but I never went out to the Hamptons.
Wow.
You were missing out.
Well, no, I take that back. I played there. I used to be a guitar player in bars, and I played someplace in the Hamptons one time. And I said, this is how the other half lives.
Well, I'll have you know, it's a beautiful area, but it's kind of a funny place. You have incredibly huge mansions that celebrities live in, and then you have sort of the neighborhoods where all the workers of the Hamptons live. And I'll let you know that I'm living in the worker neighborhood. I'm not living in the big mansion, that's for sure.
Well, and I'm guessing some of those mansions are owned by people who started out as the worker bee and became, right? Am I right? Isn't that what's possible?
That's true. That is. Yeah, that is. And there's a lot of successful entrepreneurs who have risen up and been able to achieve a lot of fame and fortune.
Do you know, every single time we have somebody, like a negative person on the phone with us, and I'm not saying it happens a lot, but every once in a while you have somebody especially negative about the economy, the current state of the economy. I will always think this, and I might even say it, that right now there's somebody out there that is doing horribly, and they're starting a business, and next year they're going to be on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. So there's always opportunity, even when people are saying it's the worst of times.
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes that actually can be the best time, actually, to start a business in terms of if it's a tough economy, like, say, what we saw during the financial crisis not that long ago. You know, that can be a good time to start a business because things are cheap. You know, if you need space is cheap. If you need employees, people are willing to work for less. So it can be a good time to start a business. And then, you know, sometimes I've interviewed quite a few entrepreneurs who have started businesses when they were at just a personal low point in their lives, and they had nothing to lose. And they were really motivated to start incredibly, what turned out to be incredibly successful companies. So yeah, it's amazing what can come of not such great times.
And sometimes people have this misconception about a business that they have to have huge office space. They have to have all the high-tech equipment, all what's happening right now, when they could maybe start out a little slower. What kind of advice can you give to those people?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And that, you know, it sort of used to be that way, where you really kind of had to get all your ducks in a row, and you had to have all of that before starting a business. You know, obviously technology has changed things considerably. I think you were mentioning someone who's a teacher who works from home as a teacher. That it's really incredible, the tools we have now that allow us to do that. And one of the things, and I talk about this in the book, you know, one of the things I would definitely recommend is something that is called the Lean Startup Method, which has become very popular in recent years. It was it's sort of this movement that started. This guy named Eric Geis wrote a book Eric Ries, wrote a book called The Lean Startup Method. And basically what it is you start off with a bare bones version of whatever it is that you're thinking of in terms of starting a business, whatever your idea is. The idea is you want to test out the market. You want to take baby steps, as it were. So you put out, it's called the minimum viable product, sort of the minimum you need to test out your idea. You see if there's a market. You see if there's customers who will actually pay money for this. You see if there's demand for it. And then you can kind of go from there. You can get to the point where if it really looks like you're going to be able to create a business with it, maybe you can finally quit your day job, things like that. But it's a great way to test out your idea. I definitely recommend it for folks who aren't quite ready to make the leap yet. It's a way of taking baby steps.
Yeah. A lot of times we will try to educate ourselves by watching videos. And so, anything, how to change a tire. I mean, I'm guessing if I went to YouTube right now and put in how to start my own business, there'd be somebody on there, probably many somebodies. In fact, you're probably on there.
I think I am.
Giving advice.
You'll probably find a few videos, yeah.
Okay, and maybe that's kind of speaks to my point that some of these people will be giving good advice and others we don't know, right? So, I mean, how do you know, what would be the one thing to always avoid? I would think, can I try to answer the question? If somebody's asking you to pay money, right? I mean, if somebody's saying join, what do you want to say? Like start a home business, send me $350 and I'll send you a kit, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you definitely want to avoid anything like that sounds like a scam probably is a scam. So definitely avoid all of that.
Yeah.
And when you have a great idea for a business and you want, maybe it's a product that you want to see on store shelves, things like that, you need all of your resources to get it to that point. So you don't want to be spending your limited resources on something that's untested, and you want to ignore any of those sort of very kind of super scammy promotional looking things. And I would say, so I wrote this book for Inc. magazine. I would say go to the trusted sources for business advice. Go to the Inc. magazines of the world, the Wall Street journals, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go wrong.
Well, you bring up patterns of navigating the rocky terrain.
Mm-hmm.
So how do people stop the naysayers in their life and move forward?
It would be nice to know how to get those naysayers to stop, whether in terms of business or anything else. But, one of the things that I talk about in the book is sort of, at the very beginning, you've got to come up with your business idea, right? And some people know right away what they want to do. Others are looking for, they really want to start a business, but they're not sure what to do. And one thing I always recommend is to, make sure that whatever you're doing solves sort of like a personal pain point or frustration for you. And the reason I say that is there's a couple reasons. One is that if you want to create a product or service that solves some problem that you're experiencing, then there's probably other people out there that want to see this product or service as well, and they're called your future customers. For that reason, it's a good idea. But then the other reason is that if you're creating a business because you're trying to solve something that was a frustrating situation for you, then you're very invested in whatever it is that you're making,
right.
And you're very personally motivated. And I think that gets you through the tough times, because it is a rocky ride, and there will be a lot of naysayers. There'll be people in your family who are saying, why are you spending so much time doing this? You do have to devote a lot of your time, your energy, your resources.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to sacrifice time away from family to do this. So if you're personally motivated because you want to see this product or service exist for your own self, then that's sort of I think the best thing you can do. And when I sat down to write the book, I looked at all of these basically super successful entrepreneurs over the years, and I tried to see what kind of trends or patterns there were with all of them. And that was a big one, is that almost all of them had started their business in the first place because they wanted that product or service to exist for themselves. A fun example that I'll mention is Sarah Blakely, who is the inventor of a product called Spanx. and she tried on a pair of white pants and did not like how she looked in those pants, and so she invented this undergarment that sort of smooths things out.
Right.
And she tried it on, and she was like, this needs to exist. People will pay money for this. And she was exactly right, and she's now a billionaire. So
wow. I wonder if the name helped.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
So there was a story.
That's all part of it.
There was a story this morning that's similar to this from Santa Monica. A guy named Jamie Siminoff. Apparently, he was on Shark Tank, and he was pitching to those guys this idea for a doorbell that would ring on your phone, and then on your phone you could look at through a camera or whatever that was by the doorbell, and you could see who was there. And the Shark Tank guys rejected him. And the reason it's in the news today is because Amazon just bought it for $1 billion.
Wow.
I did see that story, yeah.
Wow.
Holy mackerel.
Wow. Good
Now
for him.
he'll be living in the Hamptons. You watch.
Yeah.
Totally. See, that's another good reason to ignore the naysayers, right? If you personally believe in your product, that's all you need. You don't need to listen to other people.
How do you protect it?
And that's incredible.
In his case, he had how do you protect it in general? Like, how to protect your name? How do you protect a product? Like in his case, he invented a product. That's a patent, I guess.
Yeah.
But how do you protect your name from, like, let's say you started your own company, which I'm sure you've done many. How do you stop somebody else from using your name?
Well, and I talk about this in the book too. When I've interviewed so many people over the years who are at different stages of starting a business, and there are a lot of people who, in the very early stages, even before they've launched, they almost have this paralysis because they're so fearful that someone else is going to steal their idea. For one thing, if you have this idea, probably someone else has it somewhere. Ideas, there's not a heck of a lot of original ideas anymore. Even the one you just described that Amazon bought, I think other people make products like that. But, the thing that separates you from other people is what you bring to the table, your expertise, your network, and also, maybe you have a different spin or angle on the idea that is your competitive advantage. And, you kind of bring a lot of different pieces to this that others can't easily replicate. So, a lot of people, I think, worry unnecessarily that someone is going to rip them off. And I would say, just get started and see where it takes you. Instead of spending all this time and resources before you even start, consulting with lawyers and getting patents and all this sort of thing. Just launch your product and see if there's a market for it. And once you get going, maybe at a given time it makes sense to make sure your intellectual property is secured. If you are the type of company that's going to be trying to attract investors, that probably will be something you will need. But you got to just get started first and see where it takes you. I just think people worry sometimes unnecessarily about that, someone ripping them off or something like that.
And how about the funding for your business, for self-funding? Should you try to write up a business plan and go to a financial institution and get the funds, or do you like those Kickstarter and things ideas?
Yeah, it really depends on what stage your business is at. There are some things that have changed over the years. One thing that hasn't changed is that you really need your own resources to start a business. When you're at kind of ground zero, when you haven't even launched yet, there's very few people who will actually give you money at that stage. So you really need to have your own resources. You have to turn to your own savings. This is why some people don't quit their day job when they're in the early stages, because they need some source of income coming in. The next most common place to look for money is friends and family. Sometimes I call that money love money, because only people who love you will loan you money to pursue this idea. Certainly a bank is not going to, until you have more of a track record. These days, a lot of people do use crowdfunding platforms, and that's a great method of not just raising money, but that's a great method of marketing your business and getting your name out there and your idea out there, and seeing if there's it's a way sort of to test your idea and see if there are people receptive to it and receptive enough that they want to contribute a little bit to get you going. So that's a great way to raise that kind of early funding. Once, in terms of sort of more serious dollars, generally speaking, you have to have more of a track record. Certainly, if you're going to get anything from a bank, that's always been difficult. And I was talking before about that lean startup method. One of the things you need to do after you've done that, and after you've gotten your this great idea, and after you've gained a little traction and you've got some customers and you're seeing things happen, then you have to sit down and write that sort of traditional business plan that is a more formal. It's something in writing that formally encapsulates your great idea, where you're going to go with it, who your market is, who your competitors are. Mm-hmm. You're going to need something like that to get money from a bank or even from investors. Investors want to. I think we've all seen Shark Tank. Investors
Right.
will want to hear your pitch, but very few businesses really are going to be seeking investors. There's really only there's something like 30 million small businesses in the United States.
Right.
Only a handful really are high growth, companies that would be, appropriate for equity financing, that would be maybe seeking to go public someday or seeking to be acquired by a bigger company. And those are the types of companies that would seek investors.
Colleen, I was going to just take a moment here to ask you if you
Sure.
could pronounce your last name for me.
Oh, you actually pronounced it correctly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me reintroduce for those just tuning in. Colleen DeBaise is on the phone. Her book is called "Start a Successful Business." I found it on Amazon. I got the cover of the book on the podcast that we're doing right now. The one thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you feel about because when you talk about investing, obviously,
Yeah.
an investment is intended to be seed money, so that money is going to make money. And then you get to pay back whoever you borrowed it from.
Right.
So that's ideally the whole idea. What do you think about something that's already tried and true, like a franchise? Are you actually in business for yourself when you buy a franchise?
I think so. It's I don't know. Maybe some people could have some philosophical argument that you didn't found the business or something. But I think when you buy into a franchise, you're benefiting from the fact that someone else founded this company and has come up with all of these kind of policies and procedures and an operating manual. But you still have to bring so much to it, your own resources, your own time. You've got to build that particular business in that particular market. Yes, you've got a set of instructions essentially, but there's no guarantee of success, and you've got to make it successful, maybe with some help from the parent company. But I definitely think that buying into a franchise is an excellent way to be a business owner, and it's legit.
But you have to keep
You're a legit business owner.
But you have to keep your objectivity about things. You just can't all of a sudden have this business and then close your eyes to what's really going on. You have to be so alert and in the thick of things at all times.
Yeah, I think that's for anyone who runs a business. And that was another thing that I had noticed when I sat down to write this book, I looked at what the super successful entrepreneurs do, and how do they achieve success? What is it that's special about what they do that others can learn from? And one of them is that they're really not afraid to pivot, to tweak their business model, to really kind of keep their finger on the pulse of what customers want, and then change and shift as the market demands. And a great example of that is actually Amazon, which started 2 decades ago now, but started as an online bookstore, which
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really even think of it as that anymore because it sells everything under the sun and owns pretty much everything under the sun now.
Right.
You know, and another good example is Netflix, which started out just as a DVD rental
that's a good
service,
idea.
right? And
So-
you know, people don't even use DVDs anymore, and it's basically become a Hollywood studio, really. So you know, there are good examples of companies that were founded by individuals, and they just kept evolving and pivoting and changing, and really listening to what the market was asking for.
So I want to tell you something. We are we are a radio station, and we are a business, and we survive by people buying advertising. And yet, our ethical selves says, you know, don't sell advertising to somebody that it's not going to work for. And so each person who comes in here asking, hey, I would like to buy ads, we kind of say, okay, well, what do you sell? What do you do? And because in other words, we don't want to just say yes to everybody, you know, holding money in our face. The boss might want to, but I think all right. But what I'm getting at here is this: that a lot of people will say, I don't need to pay money for advertising because I can use Facebook, I can use social media. And I know there are a lot of success stories of people who use social media. So what is the balance? How do you know where to spend money for advertising? Because some radio works for some people, and newspaper works better for other people, for example.
Yeah. Well, I will say, you know, I too, as a journalist and as someone who works for pretty big news organizations, I too am in an industry that is reliant on advertising to succeed. But what I will say is that the great thing about social media, love it or hate it, and we kind of all both love it and hate it, I think. But one of the great things about it is that it has really leveled the playing field, especially for the startup entrepreneur. And this is a big shift in the way things were, say, maybe 20 years ago, where when you started a business, to really get your name out there and to get exposure, you had to advertise. You had no other choice. Now you can very cheaply build your brand on any number of social networks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's a great tool to use, especially for the startup entrepreneur. One of the things I recommend is if you're in the startup phase and you want to get your name out, is to just pick one of these networks, because it can be a little too overwhelming. Pick the one that's the most logical for your business. Say you're like a restaurant and you make like beautiful food. A very visual network like Instagram is a great one to post photos of your food and to build your brand that way and to engage with your customers. In terms of traditional advertising, that's something that it really depends on the company you are and what stage you are and whether you have the resources to do it. Because that's not a cheap thing. A benefit of social media is that it's inexpensive. Yeah. But a disadvantage is that everybody is using social media, so it is harder to stand out, and that's the benefit of paying more and and advertising on the radio or on TV, things like that. But you really you have to have those funds to be able to do that in the first place.
Your book is published by Inc. magazine, is that right?
Yep, Inc. magazine.
Okay, Start a Successful Business. It's on Amazon, and I'm guessing on your website, ColleenDeBaise.com, correct?
Exactly, right. And if you go to Inc.com, which is Inc. magazine's website, you can find links to it there as well.
Well, absolutely good information, and obviously from a really reliable source. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you for being on the air with us. I think we have more questions than we have answers, so we'll have to read the book.
Well, I really enjoyed my time with you. Thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you. We will be right back. If you find an animal or a bird that needs help, call Animus Foundation at 352-843-6379. They will come and get the animal if you can't take it to them. High school students and those with court-ordered community service can earn required hours in this rewarding environment. And veterans who share a bond with animals and parents who have been through mental or physical trauma are especially welcomed. Families, clubs, and tourists can arrange for tours of Animus without driving for hours or miles. Consider volunteering. Animus needs you.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Chris Foster. A big sporting goods chain responds to the school shooting in Florida by taking some guns off its shelves.
Dick's Sporting Goods is ending sales of all assault-style rifles. The company also will not sell any gun to anyone under 21 years of age, regardless of local laws. Chief Executive Edward Stack, son of the company founder, says, "When we saw what happened in Parkland, we were so disturbed and upset. We love those kids and their rallying cry, enough